Hello there, I'm Paul Oak from Jones Feed Mills, and we're continuing on today with our series on backyard poultry. In video number 2, are backyard chickens really for you? And I'm being with Elaine Klesser from Kitchener Urban Hens. And we're going to talk about some of the things to think about and maybe some of the challenges to look for as far as being part of backyard poultry and having backyard chickens. One thing people always ask, do you think chickens are cute? Everybody likes little baby chicks, and you may think that they're cute and adorable and something that you want to have as part of your life. If you're watching this video, chances are that you're probably at that stage already and you're highly considering doing this, and that's great, and you're off to a good start. If you've spent time around chickens and they hold little appeal to you, or that you find that they might be too much work, it may not be a good idea to get into doing this. Also remember that if you love them, or that your spouse or significant other may not have the same feelings towards this, it may be something that you'll have to think about. You may end up doing the brunt of the workload, or your spouse may also end up doing that too. So that's obviously something to think about. Also, do you have enough space available? That's important too. Chickens don't require a ton of space, but they do need to be cooped up under certain circumstances, and especially if the municipal regulations, such as in Kitchener, do require that they be cooped up. Chickens need a minimum of 10 square feet per bird, so that's important to remember. Having said that, the more space you can provide for your chickens, the better, both indoor and out. The more that chickens will peck at the soil that they do have, the more they will decimate it. That is something to think about. Chickens are obsessive about scratching, pecking at the soil, and they will dig small holes for dust baths and things like that. They also love to eat weeds and plants, so they're going to decimate whatever small area that you do provide for them. So that is something to think about them when you're doing backyard chickens. Also, they do require a little bit of time and dedication every day, and perhaps Elaine can expand on that.
Yes, chickens don't require, like Paul said, they don't require a lot of time, but they do require a daily commitment of time. I find I generally spend about 10 minutes a day with my hens. I break it up into 2 visits, once in the morning and once in the evening, so 5 minutes per visit. It gives me a chance to check their food and water and make sure they have enough, to collect any eggs, and also to just take a quick look around the coop and make sure that nothing is amiss, that there's nothing that needs to be repaired or nothing that's been knocked over. So just to do a quick visual. But once a week I do go in and do a cleaning of the coop itself. Again, it takes roughly 15-20 minutes, so not a lot. And then twice a year, you're looking at, generally in the spring and the fall, we find is the best time. We spend about an hour to an hour and a half doing a thorough cleaning of the coop, preparing for winter or cleaning up after the winter. And at that time we actually empty out the entire run, put down new bedding, and do a thorough cleaning of the coop, including all the nesting boxes and the roosting bars. So that's roughly what you're looking at if you're looking at having backyard hens, and if you think that is too much time, then maybe they're not the ideal pet for you.
In video 1 also we talked about the benefits and the way you can kind of socialize and get to know your neighbors a little bit better through doing backyard chickens and having them. But also maybe some of, not the drawbacks, but maybe some of the negatives towards the backyard poultry, and thinking about your neighbors, and maybe you could expand on that as well.
Often it's a good idea to talk to your neighbors before you get backyard hens. A lot of people are totally in favor of backyard hens, but you will find neighbors who do not like the idea and feel that backyard hens are a detriment to the neighborhood and will bring down their house values due to stench and noise. Generally we find that these are people who don't actually have any experience with hens, and so if you talk to them and you can explain to them the realities of having backyard hens, and that you're not looking at having an entire barn in your backyard, you're looking at just having 4 or 5 hens, generally you can persuade them that it's not a big deal. You don't need neighbor consent in Kitchener to keep hens. It's just a good thing to keep up neighborly associations, to give them an idea of what's going on before you make that final plunge.
And of course, it's always a good idea too to let them know that there'll be a few fresh eggs coming their way.
That never hurts.
Yeah, so your neighbors will be happy that way to have a little breakfast treat as part of being your neighbor as well.
Yes.
And as far as the cost factor, what would you say on that towards having backyard chickens? What would people likely have to expect, or what would they be looking at as far as cost factor?
The day-to-day expense is not big. However, there is a large startup expense. So if you're looking for free eggs, this is not the way to go. Day to day, you're looking at pennies. But the initial startup cost, you're looking at buying the birds, you're looking at building the coop and run, you're looking at getting the feed and the bedding and the waterers and feeders. So it's not like you can just go to the local pet store and pick something up. You actually generally have to drive to a feed mill, or like Jones Feed Mill, or to a local farm to get these. So it is definitely a commitment of time. It is definitely a commitment of money. How much money you spend on the coop and run depends on how fancy you want it to be. I've seen people who have built coops with scraps left over from renovations. I've also seen people who have spent $600 to $700 on coops. So it depends entirely on what you are looking for. On average, though, I would say you're looking at a minimum cost of $300 to $400.
And the time commitment too. I know we've been talking a bit earlier that there's a fairly lengthy time commitment too. And one thing people have to realize is that pet chickens can live up to 20 years. They have been known to live up to 20 years, and they only lay eggs reliably for 6 to maybe 8 years. So you're having to deal with the moral or ethical decision after that as to what you do. Do you go and raise them as pets until they are deceased and live out their natural life, or are they processed for meat? And do you go down that avenue? Maybe you could touch a little bit more on that as well too.
We thankfully haven't come to that decision, but it is something you should think of in advance, as it will again affect your length of time commitment as well as your cost factor. Like Paul said, they lay only reliably for about 6 to 8 years, and I think the Guinness Book of World Records has one that lived actually 22 years.
Wow.
Which is a long time. So most municipalities, you have a restriction as to how many hens you can have. So if you really have to think about this in advance. In Kitchener, you're allowed to have 4 hens. So for a large family like we have, when one of those hens stops laying, you run into that question as to whether you take it to a facility to have it processed, or whether you take it to a vet to have it euthanized, or whether you let it live out its natural life. Depending on which avenue you pick will drastically affect the cost. And I've known people who have done all 3 options. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of personal choice and personal preference.
And you were able to grandfather in through your birds. You actually have 6. So
you
have 6 decisions to make.
We will have 6 decisions to make. Unfortunately, hopefully we won't have to make that decision for a while, which is one of the reasons why I think it's definitely a good decision to think of in advance, so that when the time comes, you're not put on the spot and have to make a snap decision.
So if you've decided after listening to all the pros and cons of whether you want to have backyard chickens or whether they're right for you and you want to take that next step, we're going to look in video 3 as to which breed of hen is right for you.